Hey there, heavy lifters. Welcome to another edition of the Heavy Lifts podcast. In this week's edition, we talk to Melissa Ludington. Melissa is the volunteer coordinator for the Union Gospel Mission, the UGM, based in Salem, Oregon. Melissa has an incredible story. At one point in her life, she was held captive by the Mexican cartel. She's dealt with alcohol and drug abuse. She's been all over the West Coast, and she's ended up in a place I think that we would all say we're grateful for in terms of helping support a faith-based mission here in Salem. So hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you enjoy this discussion. We really dive deep into the unhoused and homelessness and addiction, and I learned a lot from talking to Melissa, and I'm really grateful for her perspective, and I'm really interested in learning more about the UGM. All right, Melissa Ludington, welcome to Heavy Lifts. How are you doing?
Doing great.
A little bit of challenges here on our technical side, but thankfully we're in a good place now. And I appreciate you so much for joining me today and being patient as we work through this process. We're not used to doing virtual here at Heavy Lifts, so doing a virtual one is a challenge.
Yeah, there's a little bit of hurdles to kind of go over, but we conquered. So
We did it. Yeah, we did it together, and thank you. You were awesome to work with, and I'm already excited for our discussion because you have such an amazing story. And before we get into it, I wanted to just talk about like our shared connection, which is Conrad Venti. How do you know Conrad?
yeah, I worked for Conrad over at Venti's. He was at that time he had transitioned over and was the owner over there. I was his back of house manager, so we knew each other for about 5 6 years in that sort of relationship, and now we still collaborate because he's so engaged in our community, and I'm engaged in the community too. So we kind of always kind of stay connected through that. He's just one of those kinds of people that you meet and you stay connected with. He's just got such amazing persona about him.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I'm always really grateful to the connectors in our society, right? The connectors in our community, people who can you just know so many different people. They've been around for so long, and they've got such good positive energy. And it's like their connections can help you connect with other people. And it's always amazing with Conrad because I'm walking around Salem, and it's like he'll see somebody he knows, and he shakes their hand, and then we'll keep walking, we'll talk, and then he meets somebody else, he shakes their hand. He says, so I call him the mayor of Salem, even though he I don't think wants to be the mayor, but I think he knows enough people to be like the mayor. So he's a great guy.
He'd be a great mayor. Yeah.
I agree. He would get my vote, no doubt about that. I want to jump into your story, Melissa, and I want to talk about how you grew up and where you grew up. Can we just kind of start with there from childhood?
Oh, yeah, we're going all the way back here. Um, yeah, so I originally was born in California, in LA, around the outskirts there. When I was out there, we had a ranch property with my mom and my dad and my brother. I had one sibling, and my mom, when I was 5 weeks old, ended up, tragically getting in a car accident, where she was T-boned and she was pronounced dead on scene. However, she ended up surviving, but, through that, transition, we had to leave the ranch behind. She ended up being disabled in a wheelchair, and so we ended up migrating up to Oregon, when I was very young, and lived in Bend, Oregon. And Bend, Oregon's where I lived most of my life. So through my whole childhood, teen years, um, and during my teenage years is actually when I began my journey of self discovery, or homelessness, if you may call it there. And I started very young, and my around my 17-year-old ages, there being very unstable. I later came to Salem, but I guess I'll be kind of later through the journey here.
Mhm.
Um, But, yeah, so definitely from California, but what happened with my mom and that instability with, what happened with her physically, but also mentally with her head injury had such a huge impact on my whole family and my life, not only moving geographically, but just the environment in which I was raised, huge impact.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you started out in California, in the LA area, and there was a traumatic incident then with your mom that led her to be disabled. And then you were, then what was the decision to move to Oregon? Like what made you guys decide to move there?
So my dad was into golf courses. So he was like a superintendent on golf courses down in Southern California. He had like a landscape degree.
Okay.
So it was very strategic in going up to Oregon. We started in Klamath Falls and then Bend, Oregon, and that was
Mhm.
because of the plethora of golf courses in those areas. So
Okay.
that's part of the reason why we moved up in those areas was to follow work for my dad. But my mom had always dreamed of getting out of California, which I'm sorry if there's any Californians who are listening to this. I am so glad she moved, had that dream of getting out of California. So,
Well, one of the things I realized when my family and I moved here 10 years ago was that there were so many Californian transplants and a lot of folks who had been living in California for a long time and wanted to escape the incredible cost of living the high cost of living that was happening in California and the concrete jungle that was down there, and they just said, I want to come up here and have a different kind of a lifestyle. So it was golf, really, the sport of golf that kind of made you and your family have to move.
yeah, yeah, golf.
Yeah, and so talk to me about what happened then with your family. When you went to, is it Bend, which is where you started having experiencing some homelessness?
Yeah. So when we moved to Ben, and I did really well when I was growing up and in school. There were some things that, were I guess to people's standards were abnormal the way I was raised. I dealt with some mental illness that started to show up in my middle school ages, and it's really hard to like diagnose. Hey, is that a mental illness or is that just hormones? So a lot of it was either over medicated or not identified or diagnosed correctly when I was young. Um, they later found out that I have a pretty severe bipolar disorder
Okay.
that was kind of contributing to some of these issues when I was in Bend. And then the rebelliousness that kind of accrued naturally out of that. But there's definitely the world of mental illness, especially with the way how we treat mental illness. People talked about, I remember back in the day, they were talking about how weed is a leap drug and how that leads to drug addiction.
Hmm.
I fully believe that also our mental illness drugs can be a leap drug to other drugs. I was prescribed an abundance of medications, and so by the time I was in high school, I was on anti psychotic medications. I was on trazodone, anxiety pills, and I started abusing my prescribed medications,
Oh my gosh.
which led me to using other drugs. And once I used these other drugs, my mom found out, and there was not a grace there. So I was kicked out on my own, and that was 17, 18 years old is when I kind of began this unstable journey that I was on.
Wow. So what you're saying is you were using some drugs, medications, just to deal with some of the mental illness issues you were having, and those caused you to abuse and kind of use more and get into some different medications or drugs. Is that right?
Yeah, well, you think you're like, "Oh, well, this one kinda helped my anxiety, and then this one helped with me going to sleep," and then you start hearing about some others and friends from school, and even my aunt was which was interesting. I was, on a flight to go visit my family in Louisiana,
Mhm,
and she was getting anxiety, and I told her, "Well, I have these prescribed pills," and I believe I was 13 at this time,
mhm,
and I showed her what they were, and, they were Valium, and she's
mhm.
like, "What? You get these?" I had no idea, that these were, really good drugs, and so she ended up using a whole bunch of them, and then it started to kind of click in my head like, "Oh, these are abusive drugs." And friends started wanting to have my medications, and I was realizing, okay, well, if these drugs that I'm prescribed are like this, well, it started kind of opening the gate, thinking maybe these other drugs, maybe there's an unseen world out there where they're actually of a help, of an aid to help you cope with life, and some of those things, I mean, we have mental illness, and some of it, life is hard growing up. You got hormones, you got peer pressures. I mean, it's a difficult world to grow up in.
Yeah, and what was your family unit like at that point in time? You know, it sounded like your mom was disabled, your dad was working at a golf course. Obviously, like that. Did you have brothers and sisters, and how stable was your unit?
Yeah, I had one older brother, and I still have my older brother,
Yeah.
and we were super close growing up, and we started to rekindle that relationship a little bit as of late. Uh, I went obviously, I went through a very rebellious stage in my life where I was using a lot of drugs, and he never went down that path. So but growing up, we were very, very close because we kind of had like that shared trauma within the world of what we were growing up in. My mom, bless her soul, I love her dearly, but she had a lot of mental instability due to her head injury. And it wasn't always easy to understand that. You just think, this is my mom. Why is she acting like a child and taking everything out on me? And I remember she had wanted me to get like open brain surgery to get myself fixed, or
Oh, jeez.
have a priest would be there like doing holy water on my room and wanting to get an exorcism done. And it
Mhm,
didn't quite click to me. And my dad tried to help me understand that, like, your mom is sick too.
mhm.
And now I understand these things, but when you grow up in that environment, and my brother kind of took me under his wing, and I would be in tears, and we play video games together. So we were very tight, which was just huge. I couldn't imagine going through everything we went through alone. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's incredible. And well, it's good that you did have your brother to lean on as well. And was he using drugs, or was he did he steer clear from those?
He steered cleared from those. He was a drinker, and my dad was an alcoholic back in the day. He quit when he had kids, but he drank, but he didn't go drastically down the path I did. He ended up being extremely successful. Became really career driven.
Mhm.
Went to like Shanghai, and now he's working really high up with an AI company and goes all over the world. So he did not go the same path. So it's interesting when you're thinking about, you know, uh, people who are talking about like environments and how those can drive people to their situations. But you can have two individuals in the exact same environment, and one goes off loose and becomes homeless, and one's incredibly successful.
Right. Oh, that's an interesting point for sure. I've got so many questions for you, but one thing I wanted to ask was, so what was like the tipping point then to go homeless? Was it the incident with your mom? Then she just said, "I've you're doing all these drugs. I've had enough. You're out."
Yeah, the initial. So there's, and I guarantee you, if you speak to people out there homeless in the camps, it's usually periods of gaps of having a house and then being homeless again, and then having a house and then being homeless again. So the initial gap that I had where I was homeless was, yes, I'm addicted to drugs. I want to do things my own way. And there was a boy involved too, young girls with their first loves.
Yeah.
So I went out there and I thought, this is a great idea. I'm just going to use drugs and go hang out with this boy. Boy kicked me out too because obviously you're not really set up for great relationships when you're intoxicated and loaded on drugs.
And
So
what,
then I
17?
had
Is that
burnt.
you were 17 as well, right? Yeah. Yeah, really young.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh my God.
yeah. Yeah, I'm very young. So, I'm like, "Okay, well, that didn't work out very well." So then I went back with mom and dad for a little bit, pretended to have, changed my ways, but it became very, apparent very quickly that that was not the scenario. So there I was, back out it as soon as that they can legally, kick me out. Um, and I was like, "Okay, fine. I wanna do things my own way." I've always had that stubborn, "I'll do it my own way" kinda attitude.
Mhm.
And so I went back out and I did have a job, so I was able to, like, pay to kinda couch hop, go to, different places, but I had a really horrible drinking addiction. So, people didn't want me around. After a while, like a week, "Okay, Melissa, it's been great having you. Let's get you to move on." Uh, so my first job was at Albertsons, and there I found the perfect situation. I thought I lived underneath the bottle room because back at the time they didn't have bottle drop. They actually did like the can retentions and things there at the bottled room. So I would sleep under there, and then I would keep my work clothes up in the break room. And I thought I had a great deal going on with me. Uh, and then I ended up getting pulled into my manager's office with my job on the line because of the lack of hygiene, and I smelled like beer.
Mhm.
So, I had to find a way to, okay, I need to figure out something here. So then I ended up being off the streets, and I paid for a room in an apartment
Mhm.
um, for, gosh, I would say about a year and a half. I kept that going, you know. And, the party life just keeps calling you. So I ended up partying a whole lot. And through that, I was pregnant at a fairly young age. I was 19 when I was pregnant.
Okay.
And ended up getting stable for quite a while during that time. I stayed at a pregnant shelter for teens. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization called Grandma's House in Bend, Oregon.
Mhm.
If anybody's ever in Bend, Oregon, it's a wonderful place to go check out.
Okay.
They helped me with getting stable, learning how to parent, being a first time mom, got an apartment, by the state, where they how they do the housing vouchers, and
Mhm.
then they move you right in there with no accountability at all,
Mhm.
and so then here I am, a young mom with, an unidentified drug addiction, so I ended up relapsing, and started that whole trail, of drug addiction. uh I was fairly successful. I mean, if you're looking at paper, like on paper during that time,
Mhm.
I had graduated massage therapy school. I was a licensed massage therapist. I was a caregiver. I was mom of the PTA. I did a lot of successful things on paper, but if you peeked behind the curtain, I was a heroin addict at that time.
Okay.
S Then the next gap goes through, and I mean, it's only a matter of time before you lose that stability and it goes out of control. And that's when I went into hard homelessness, very hard homelessness. And that was a 6 year stretch after I had my daughter. And I actually had a career. I was a licensed massage therapist. I was a caregiver. I did all sorts of odd end jobs too. But uh, in that point, I had gone to heroin, and with heroin addiction, it is a totally different beast, a completely different beast. When heroin addicts are talking about getting high, they call it getting well. And that's because when you are not using it, you can't function. It feels like every piece of your body is being ripped apart. It's like the worst flu you've ever had in your life. And, not to be too graphic here, you might want to edit this out, but I mean, both ends things are happening. You're having just the cold sweats and dripping. And so trying to take care of my daughter who is 3, be like, sorry, your mom's got a detox for 3 days. And nobody knew I was an addict in my family, or around. And so where my social status was, I did not want people to be aware of this. So it went on for a long time, and I kept trying to sustain my addiction, but the only way I could sustain my addiction at that time is I ended up dealing it. Now you get in mixed in all sorts of unreputable things when you are you're selling your soul to the devil is what it is. I lost my soul, and during that time things, the Melissa that I had thought I knew was gone. And it was all to sustain this beast that was attached to me. um, it eventually got to a point where I knew my daughter was unsafe. I knew she was unsafe in the environment she was at. People would show up to my house a couple of times with a gun. uh, I just knew I had to get my daughter out. So I did the hardest phone call of my life, which was calling my father. And I had to admit I was a heroin addict. And I told him, I need you to take my daughter. So he did. Same afternoon, he took my daughter. Said we're going for a sleepover. And a week later, CPS showed up at my doorstep. So have I not done that? Child Protective Services would have had her in foster instead with family. Um, it was so difficult. That was the hardest phone call I ever had to make, because she was my world, she was my stability, which is not right to ask of a 3-year-old. And, after she left, I lost it. I lost my will to carry on. I attempted suicide. I didn't care anymore. And through that lack of caring, I ended up losing the apartment. I had SWAT show up at my door. That was a SWAT, yeah, because I was a huge drug dealer. I mean, large quantities. I know it doesn't look like it today. It's crazy to think. When I tell people I've been where you're at, they don't believe me, and then I show them, like, my mugshots are like, "Oh," it's so, so I had SWAT at my door, and they just knock real loud, and I was given 15 minutes to leave my apartment. And all I had was a robe on. I grabbed one purse and a monster, and I go in a pack of smokes, and I go to walk out my doorstep, and the purse strap broke. Took a drink at the monster. It was chew spit in the monster can. It was just like this. It was just this loss of everything, and I'm a believer, so it felt like Job just had, like, everything ripped away from him, his family. I had cats, the cats were gone, every family picture, it was gone within 15 minutes, and that's the start of that 6-year journey. You know what? No time in jail. They just evicted me. They couldn't find anything to pin me down on. I was on a watch list, but they couldn't directly pin. I used to throw like my garbage into the neighbor apartment's garbage. I did all my drug deals at the hospital. I mean, I used my intelligence for all the wrong reasons, like these these people that are out there, I mean, they are some of the most intelligent and creative individuals out there that I think people don't quite understand that they really have intelligence behind them. We just need to channel it in a different direction. Uh, so the only thing they can get me on is I didn't pay my rent. So I was evicted and aimless, and my dad had asked me. He goes, "Would you be willing to go to rehab?" And I mean, what do you have at that time, right? Like, yeah, I will go to rehab. And I was so far gone on heroin at that time that my uncle owned a rehab facility in Southern California. And so they flew me down there, and I was just skin and bones. I was 96 pounds. Um, I could hardly stay awake. They they had to help me with opiates just to make it through the flight without detoxing because it was so bad. But then I was down in Southern California and I did 2 weeks in their detox facility. And I thought, okay, I'm good. I'm detoxed. I don't need your help. So I decided to go out on the streets of Southern California with no phone, no belongings, and just take matters in my own hands because I don't need people's help, right? I can do this on my own. I have a great track record at this point of living my own life. So I know it's gonna be a shocker, but it did not work out well. I ended up nearly being human trafficked by this Mexican cartel. Was given I was given meth and relapsed hard, but if somebody's a shot caller down there and they tell you to smoke this pipe in front of them, if you don't do it, you're in danger of your life because then they see it's like you're either one of them or you're a cop informant. um and so I ended up relapsing really bad, and I was terrified for my life. I was being held in a hotel room uh, for 3 weeks out there. I ended up finagling my way out of there. I told them I had to go to the urgent care and started acting like I had all these gastrointestinal symptoms, which I mean, I did. I was stressed, but I exaggerated it so I can go to the hospital and ended up fleeing and going up north into going and hitchhiking. And I hitchhiked into Oregon, down into Eureka, just all over the place. I was hitchhiking. I don't know how I'm still alive, honestly, with my life choices. I was, yeah. I ended up being back in my hometown, Bend, Oregon. Um, and when I was in Bend, Oregon, I was walking through areas looking for cigarette butts. Uh, Anybody who's a car owner, just please know, lock your car doors. Just do it. You may think you might not need to, but there might be somebody who's just looking for loose change in a cigarette butt. This was a brand new truck, and I go to open it up and the keys were in the ignition. Melissa, like literally Melissa, before she sold her soul, would never even consider this. This Melissa didn't even think about it. No thought. Just next thing I know, I was sitting in this truck, starting the truck, and I was out of there. Well, now I have Grand Theft Auto and I have this truck. So what do? I just drove. And that's how I ended up in Salem. Is I drove it over the mountain, and I didn't really plan on it, so I had no gas money. So I ran out of gas here. So through that, SWAT once again, because Grand Theft Auto, I had stuff all over the windows because I didn't want people to look into the truck. They came and asked me to exit the vehicle. And that was another, like, oh, maybe I should change my life. When you're getting out of the truck and all of a sudden there's just all these red dots all over your body, and they're telling you to, like, step right, move your right hand. It's like doing the hokey pokey, and you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't make a wrong move here. I've been up for days, so it was definitely one of those life shaking moments of, like, I need to do something different. So they took me to the jail. They booked me and they released me because, once again, I'm a woman, right? So I'm less likely to be a hard up criminal. So we're just going to release her. My boyfriend had the record. I was criminalized for nothing. Because I'm the woman. So, and so they just kept disregarding. And I'm not saying anything's wrong. Like, our officers are such hard workers. I have such a huge respect for our officers, but I think a lot of times we kind of typecast males into being that criminality role, and we look at women as just strictly victims rather than holding them into that accountability. So and they released me, and I would have been actually okay with staying at jail. It's safe there. You get a shower, you get a meal. Instead, they just said, "Okay, go ahead." and I didn't know anybody, so I made friends with, the man who got released with me. So he we ended up walking, all the way from the jail to downtown, all the way, down south, is where I was released at, and, thank goodness I had somebody who, knew the walk and knew where to get, cigarettes, of course, um, and this is back when the mission was at the old, small, rats in it, over the bridge, building, and my I was limping because I had an open sore, and no socks on my shoe, and somebody had saw me limping around, and they had pointed to UGM and saying, they'll give you socks there. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I went in there, and it was kind of strange because I mean it's a men's shelter, but they didn't look at me weird at all. They just like, here's some socks, like, and that was the whole start of me understanding UGM, um, was was socks. I'm known as a sock advocate. So that's how I ended up finding out. Later on, about it took about a year and a half of me, of UGM kind of building this relationship where they would give me like a small tangible gift, like whether it was socks or allowing me to shower or allowing me to have a meal. And every single time, they would ask me what my name was. They would ask me what's my story. They would ask if they could pray with me. It was like each one was an opportunity for them to get to know me. It was they wanted to know me. When I would show back up, they're like, "Hi, Melissa," and they knew my name. It was this totally something happens to you when you're out there in the streets for a very long time. And I know we've all experienced this. I still experience it when I stop at a intersection and somebody's there holding a piece of cardboard. It's called flying a sign, and you you kind of look the other way. And you're hoping that that light changes really quickly, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. And what happens on the person flying the signs, they start losing being human. People start to look away from them. They don't call them by a name anymore. And I like to consider. I used to call it becoming domesticated. Uh, of you're feral, and so thinking about what UGM does. They don't go out and just hand out the stuff. They really want you to come in and build a relationship with them. And I think one of the key things is we think we're way different than the rest of the animal kingdom, but we're really not that cool. We're very much primal. If you're looking at a stray cat that comes to your doorstep, that was me. I felt very much like a stray cat. I didn't trust. I didn't want to be pet. Just leave my food out there. I'll eat it and then I'll scurry off. But then over time, that can of tuna is there consistently and consistently, and there's no harm that comes when I come to this porch. And that's I really feel like if we're looking at like handing out freebies, it should be with the transactional care of who are you, what's your story, how can I show you love here, and being consistent with it, because what you're going to be doing is you're domesticating that human being. Sorry if anybody's offended by that out there, but for me it really helped me realize the parallel between a stray cat and myself. So if there's some houseless people that are offended that happen to be listening to this, just know I was there too. We go through our life experiences, and if we don't share our life experiences, then for me, I feel like what was the point? Because if it's something that can help somebody else. So I used to my area where I used to fly a sign was at the South Commercial, where the McDonald or Carl's Jr. and Walmart is on South Commercial, and I used to be out there every day. People think they're working. I thought I called it I was going to work, and so you walk down during the day shift, and then you stand there with your sign, and I was with another boy at this time, so different boyfriend, and we lived in the camps. So when you're camp homeless, you smell like smoke, you're dirty, there was no showers in the South commercial area. So you're very observantly homeless. This woman is leaving Walmart and she turns around, does a U-turn, comes up and pulls up and walks over with her daughter, who is about, like, I would say, like 15 years old, and approaches us and says, "Are you guys hungry?" We said, "Yeah, we're hungry." And she said, "Okay, well, do you want Carl's Jr.?" Like, like, kind of snapped me back, like, why she's having a conversation with me. Like, yeah, we would love that. And so she walked over with us and her daughter and stood with us in line and sat down and had a meal with us, asked what our names were, just treated us like people. And it snapped me into going, oh my gosh, I'm somebody's daughter. I'm a person. I have a daughter. I don't remember who she was, but I will never forget her. It was one of those moments of remembering your humanity, of remembering that I'm a person. I exist. And so I think we can hand out, and I used to have people handing out 20s and all this money. I even had $100 bill one time, and that was exciting. Uh, but, what I did with that $100 is I went and bought cigarettes, I bought beer, I bought drugs, I might have bought one sandwich, but it didn't it didn't snap me into, I'm a person, maybe I need to live like a human being again. And so I think when we're faced with driving down the road and we see these people who need help, even if you don't know how to navigate how to help these individuals, there are organizations that you can partner with. My current job right now is the volunteer coordinator with Union Gospel Mission, which I did not apply for. God placed me here, and I'm finding what an amazing journey this has been, because I'm able to kind of help encourage people and find an outlet that's safe for them to get alongside and helping the issue, and not enabling the issue but helping it. It's a tough one. I mean, we're all trying to figure out the balancing act with it, and we're trying to figure out the balancing act within it, with even with the UGM. We end up wanting to give a whole lot, and then there's times where we realize that that's not actually helpful to an individual. And I think that's the number one thing that I kind of try to understand is, will this help them or will it harm them? Like the $100 bills, was that causing me good or was that causing me harm, by allowing me to essentially kill myself with intoxicants and drugs? Not to judge and where they're at, just meet them where they're at. But at the same time, you know, I was actually thinking about this when I was driving earlier this morning, of how we have so many people that have compassionate hearts. But then sometimes we have where we think we have a compassionate heart, but really it's just easier to give them something and make ourselves feel better at the end of the day. I'm thinking about my daughter when she was growing up. She's still difficult with this, but as many kids are, vegetables, won't eat vegetables, right? And, we've all had that struggle, like, please just eat these vegetables. And it's because you need this nourishment for your body to grow. And it would be so much easier had I just gone, you know what? Okay, you just eat chicken nuggets now. You're not going to eat vegetables. You don't need the nourishment. And I think that's where our society has kind of gone is, okay, well, I'm not going to give you the nourishment. I'm not going to fight with you on it. I just want you out of my way and out of my viewpoint. So here you go. And we feel good about it, right? Because we did something, but it was actually harmful. And so and I think you'll get that deep empathy the more that you interact. the more that you actually go, and we have safe environment here. Like, all of our meals are open to the public. I've had quite a few volunteers that'll just come and sit for a meal, just to observe or sit and build a conversation with somebody. It's really that relationship that I think if we don't know who we're serving, then we're not going to serve them well. And I have a mixture of emotions because I work in a shelter. We have excess beds, but at the same time, some people are just you can't force somebody to be there. I and I know there's so much where we want to move them out and we don't want to see them. Um, and I think we need to see them. They need to be seen. Um, the more the more that we create this chaos and this moving from place to place, it's the circle, it's that gap again, right? We moved them out of this neighborhood. Now they're over in the Market Street is blowing out of control. Well, now we don't want them in our neighborhood, so then we move them out, and now Center Street is blown up and out of control. And it's the we just want to slap it and put it out of her face because it's uncomfortable. It is. I get very uncomfortable, and I work for homeless ministries, and I come out of homelessness. I don't like the streets dirty. I don't like needles and stuff at the parks where the children are. There's definitely got to be some form of middle ground, and we just quite haven't gotten there yet. But I think one of the problems we have, if we're looking at the amount of freebies that are going out into our cities to try to combat the homelessness, and we look at how many people are actually staying in homelessness, I think we have a huge influx of caring people that are handing a lot of stuff out, and that makes it easier to be homeless. And it may seem uncompassionate to allow people to suffer, uh, but it really is compassionate to allow, because the Lord is sorry if you weren't disclosed with this, but we are faith based. The Lord causes a man to stumble, and so I don't want to get in somebody's way of their recovery, and a lot of times that's them hitting rock bottom. Um, whether that's with their drug addiction or with losing their tents. A lot of people don't go and get help because of their belongings, um, because that becomes their bond, or their animals, and that becomes their bond. I don't want to get in the way of that. So I think we need to do a deep, hard look at what we're giving away and why, and being more specialized in that. I also think that even though they're houseless, I think we should definitely give them the same penalty within our criminal justice system. If I was not given areas of forced sobriety with going inside of the jail, I would have never gone into treatment. Uh, you're asking people that are operating with an irrational mindset that is being polluted with drugs to make a rational decision, and that's insanity. They're not going to make that decision when their brains are wired like that. um, when I think back on my life decisions and how crazy they seemed, and it was because I was operating with substances. When an officer plucks them off the street and gives them jail time, it gives them time to detox and start operating with a different mindset. It's crucial. I have a friend. We call him Wiz. He's the wizard. Um, he's he's 73 years old, and he's been homeless as long as I've known him, which is around the 2017 period, but he's been homeless before that. Um, and he's not he's not willing to abide to any rules, any curfew, change their drinking habits. Um, and it's sad because you do see them suffering, and I know he's going to die out there. I still love him, he's my friend, but uh there's some that the that's how they're going to live their life. I think what's crucial is the amount of time somebody's been homeless is really trying to wrap around them when they first become homeless. um, and before, because the longer that they're out there, the the longer that that becomes a normal situation for them, and it makes it harder for them to integrate back into society. So once they're in that chronic homelessness, we need to have a lot more counseling, a lot more wraparound services, which here at UGM they do very well. They have a New Life Fellowship program that really walks them through integrating, doing a GED testing, learning center, counseling, making sure they have a mentor. Um, because they need a lot more help when they're in that chronic homelessness. And I think the major lapse that we have going on in our society is when somebody has broken free of homelessness, uh, making sure they stay out of homelessness, right? They're still, we're all feeling the financial crisis at hand. We're all living paycheck to paycheck. Now, imagine if you had come from homelessness and debt and coming back into this society. So many of these numbers that we're seeing out there on the streets, it would be interesting to see if somebody had the time to ask people how many times they have been homeless. So I think if we found a way to really do a transitional care of people that are have ended homelessness and keeping them out of homelessness, I think that's what we're dealing with a lot is that gap and that recircle.